The kennel door exploded outward with a sound like a gunshot. 80 pounds of fury and teeth burst through chains, snapping like thread. Officers scattered shouting, reaching for weapons they didn't want to use. The German Shepherd's roar shook the walls, not a bark, a battle cry torn from somewhere deep and broken. "Don't shoot!" someone screamed. But Gunner wasn't attacking. He was running toward the small boy standing frozen in the hallway, his dead father's dog tags clutched in trembling hands. What happened in the next 60 seconds would either save two broken souls or destroy them both. Before we dive in, drop a comment with your city name. I love seeing how far these stories of hope and healing travel across America. 3 months earlier, the transport van's brakes screamed as it pulled into Ashford County Sheriff's Department just after dawn. Inside, Animal Control Officer Rita Mendez gripped her clipboard so hard her knuckles went white. "You sure about this?" her partner asked, eyeing the reinforced cage in the back. "No," Rita said. "But Chief Warren's orders are orders." The dog inside hadn't moved in 2 hours. He sat perfectly still, muzzled, chained eyes fixed on nothing. But Rita had seen the reports. 3 handlers hospitalized. 2 precincts refused to take him. The last facility called him unadoptable, dangerous, a lawsuit waiting to happen. The side door rolled open. Morning sun hit the cage. The German Shepherd's head snapped up, ears forward, and the growl that came out made Rita step back fast. "Easy," she whispered. "Nobody's gonna hurt you." The dog's lips curled back, his eyes amber cold, empty, locked onto hers like a targeting system. "That's Gunner." Deputy Torres had come out to watch, coffee in hand. "Heard he was big. Didn't think he'd be that big." 92 pounds, Rita said, reading her notes. "Military trained, bomb detection specialist, 3 tours overseas." His handler was Danny Carter. Torres interrupted, his voice dropping. "Yeah, we all knew Danny. Grew up here. Everybody loved that kid." He paused. "Heard the dog went crazy after Danny got killed. That true?" Rita didn't answer. She was watching Gunner, the way his muscles coiled tight under his dark fur, the way his breathing stayed controlled, calculated. This wasn't random aggression. This was something colder. "Let's get him inside," she said. Jake Morrison was 3 coffees deep and half asleep at his desk when Chief Warren walked in. "Jake?" "Chief?" Jake didn't look up from the incident report he was pretending to read. "Got a job for you." "Pass." Warren pulled out a chair, sat down heavy. He was 63, 2 years from retirement, with a face that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. "Wasn't asking," Warren said. Jake finally looked up. "If this is about that dog?" "It is." "Then my answer's still no." Jake tossed his pen down. "I'm a patrol officer, Chief, not a dog trainer, not a babysitter, and sure as hell not a miracle worker." "You worked K9 for 8 years. "Used to," Jake said, his jaw tight. Past tense. Warren studied him for a long moment. Outside, the morning shift was rolling in boots on tile radios, crackling the smell of burnt coffee and gun oil. "Shadow was 3 years ago," Warren said quietly. Jake's hands curled into fists. "Don't. You're the only handler in this county with enough experience." "I said don't. To give that dog a fair shot." "He doesn't deserve a fair shot," Jake snapped. "He's dangerous. He's attacked trained professionals. He sent a guy to the ER last month with 18 stitches. You want me to be number 4? Warren leaned back, arms crossed. Danny Carter saved 6 lives the night he died. Spotted an IED 20 feet from a convoy. His team made it home because of him." He paused. "That dog was with him every step. You think Gunner went through hell and came back broken for fun? I think he's a liability. I think he's traumatized," Warren shot back. "There's a difference." Jake stood up, grabbing his jacket. Find someone else. There is no one else, Warren said. I've got a county commissioner breathing down my neck about lawsuits, an animal rights group threatening protests, and a dog sitting in isolation that'll get put down in 2 weeks if nobody can reach him. He stood 2 matching Jake's height. You gonna let Danny Carter's partner die in a cage because you're scared? Jake's voice went deadly quiet. You don't know what you're asking. Yeah, Warren said. I do. They stood there, tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Jake exhaled. One evaluation. That's it. I look at him, I give you my assessment, and then I'm done. Deal. And Chief. Jake turned back. When I tell you he's beyond help, you listen. Warren nodded. When? The K-9 wing was at the back of the building, past the holding cells and evidence room, through 2 security doors that required badge access. The air was cooler here, quieter. The smell of disinfectant mixed with dog food and something else, fear maybe. Or grief. Jake stopped at the observation window. Inside the isolation kennel, Gunner paced. 6 steps forward, turned 6 steps back. Mechanical, relentless. His nails clicked against concrete in a rhythm that sounded almost like Morse code. How long's he been doing that? Jake asked. Rita, standing beside him, checked her watch. Since we brought him in, 4 hours. He eat. Won't touch food, won't drink, won't lay down. She pulled out a tablet, scrolling through notes. The psych eval from his last facility says he's exhibiting signs of severe PTSD. Hypervigilance aggression triggers attachment disorder. You read his file. Jake interrupted. Cover to cover. Then you know what happened to his handler. Rita nodded slowly. Roadside bomb. Helmand Province. Danny Carter was killed instantly. Gunner was 10 feet away when it went off. Jake felt something twist in his chest. He knew that story. Not from a file from the funeral. Half the county had turned out. Danny's mom sobbing so hard she couldn't stand. His kid brother trying to be brave. And the casket draped in stars and stripes that held what was left. Did they try reuniting him with Danny's family? Jake asked. His wife wanted nothing to do with him, Rita said quietly. Said looking at Gunner was like looking at the war that took her husband. She's got a son, Tommy, 8 years old. Kid never even met the dog. Jake watched Gunner pace. Turn. Pace. What's your gut say? Rita asked. Jake was quiet for a long time. My gut says he's not aggressive. He's defending himself from a world that doesn't make sense anymore. Can you work with that? I don't know. Rita handed him a keycard. Kennel access. You want to go in, protocol says you need backup protective gear and... I'm not going in, Jake said. Not today. Then what are you doing? Jake pressed his hand against the glass. On the other side, Gunner stopped pacing. His head swiveled toward the window, ears forward, eyes sharp. For 5 seconds they stared at each other. Then Gunner's lips peeled back in a snarl, and he lunged at the glass so hard the whole frame rattled. Jake didn't flinch. I'm watching. By noon, word had spread through the department. The crazy dog had a handler, or almost had one. Bets were being placed in the break room. How long before Jake quit? How long before Gunner snapped whether this whole thing would end in a lawsuit or a funeral? Jake ignored it all. He sat in the observation room with his laptop, reading everything he could find about military working dogs, PTSD, and animals rehabilitation protocols. The science was clear: dogs like Gunner could recover. But it took time, patience, and someone willing to meet them where they were. Problem was, Jake wasn't sure he had any of those things left. Burning the midnight oil already? Deputy Kelly Chen poked her head in, holding 2 sandwiches. Figured you hadn't eaten. Thanks, Jake said, taking one without looking away from his screen. Kelly sat down, unwrapping hers. She was 34 sharp, as they came with a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a soft spot for hard cases. She'd been the one who found Jake after Shadow died, sitting alone in his truck at 2 a.m. staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked. "Fine." "Liar?" She took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. "You know everyone's talking about this like it's some kind of suicide mission. But I've seen you work, Morrison. You're good with dogs. Better than good." "Was," Jake corrected. "Was good. That's not something you lose." Jake finally looked at her. "Shadow trusted me. I led him into a building I should have cleared first. He took a bullet meant for me, Kelly. So yeah, you can lose it." Kelly set her sandwich down. "That wasn't your fault. Tell that to the scar on my shoulder where they dug out the second round." Jake pulled his collar aside, showing the puckered skin. "Shadow saved my life, and I couldn't save his." "So this is penance?" Kelly asked. "You're gonna throw yourself at an impossible case because you think you owe some cosmic debt?" "Maybe. Or maybe," Kelly said carefully, "you're trying to prove you're not broken." Jake's jaw tightened. "I should get back to work." "Jake. Thanks for the sandwich." Kelly left, but her words stayed behind, hanging in the air like smoke. Duh. That night, Jake stayed late. The building emptied out, deputies heading home, dispatchers changing shifts. The hum of fluorescent lights, the only sound. He walked down to the K9 wing alone. Gunner was lying in the corner of his kennel head, on his paws, eyes open. Watching. Jake sat down on the floor outside the bars. No protective gear, no backup. Just him and the dog and the weight of too many ghosts. "Hey," Jake said quietly. Gunner's ear twitched. "I know you don't trust me, I get it." Jake leaned his head back against the wall. "I don't trust me either most days." Gunner didn't move, but his eyes tracked every breath Jake took. "They say you're dangerous," Jake continued. "That you're unpredictable, that you're a lost cause. But I've read your file, Gunner. I know what you were before." He paused. 83 confirmed explosive detections. 2 soldiers pulled from a collapsed building. A convoy rerouted because you wouldn't stop alerting on a bridge that got hit 20 minutes later. Jake's voice cracked slightly. "You were a hero, buddy. You saved lives." Gunner's breathing changed just slightly. "I had a partner too," Jake said. "German Shepherd named Shadow. Black and tan, smart as hell, loyal to a fault." He wiped his face with his palm. "I got him killed because I made a bad call, and I swore I'd never work with another dog again because I couldn't—" He stopped, throat tight. "I couldn't go through that pain twice." For a long moment, silence. Then Gunner shifted. Not aggressive, just adjusting. He laid his head down flat, still watching, but something in his posture had softened. Jake felt tears burn behind his eyes. "They're gonna put you down in 2 weeks if I can't figure this out. And the thing is, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm strong enough." He laughed bitterly. "Hell, I don't even know why I'm talking to you. You probably think I'm insane." Gunner made a sound. Not a growl, a whine. Low, barely audible, like a question. Jake's breath caught. "You understand, don't you? You know what it's like to lose someone." He pressed his forehead against the bars. "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so damn sorry about Danny." Gunner's eyes closed for just a second. When they opened again, they looked less like a weapon and more like a wound. Jake stood up slowly, knees creaking. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. "And the day after that. And the day after that. I'm not giving up on you." He paused at the door. "Danny wouldn't give up, so neither will I." As he walked away, he didn't see the way Gunner's tail moved. Just once. A single hesitant wag. But the security camera caught it. And in the morning, when Rita reviewed the footage, she called Jake immediately. "You need to see this," she said. "See what?" "Hope." Day 3. Jake brought breakfast. Not for himself, for Gunner. Scrambled eggs, plain chicken, a little rice. The kind of bland, high-protein meal military dogs were trained on. He slid the bowl through the feeding slot without a word. Gunnar sniffed it. Didn't eat, but he didn't knock it over either. Progress. Jake sat outside the kennel again, this time with a notebook. He started sketching out a training plan. Not traditional obedience, Gunnar already knew all that. This was different. This was rehabilitation, trust building, teaching him that not every human was a threat, that not every loud noise meant danger, that the world could be safe again. Okay, Jake said aloud, mostly to himself. Step 1, desensitization. We start with distance. I stay outside the kennel, you stay inside. No pressure, just presence. Gunnar watched him write. Step 2, positive association. Every time you see me, good things happen. Food, water, maybe eventually a toy. Jake glanced up. You like toys? Gunnar tilted his head. I'll take that as a maybe. Jake scribbled more notes. Step 3, controlled contact. This is weeks away, but eventually we try touch. Through the bars first, then muzzle off. Then, he stopped. Then we see if you remember what it's like to be someone's partner. Gunnar's ears flicked back. Jake closed the notebook. I'm not Danny, he said softly. I know I'm not, and I'm not trying to replace him. But I think... His voice caught. I think maybe we're both tired of being alone. Gunnar stood up, walked to the front of the kennel, sat down 3 feet from the bars, closer than he'd ever been. Jake's heart hammered. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just let the moment exist. Good boy, he whispered. Gunnar's tail twitched again, and for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morrison felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope. Day 7. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday. Jake had been working with Gunnar for a week, 15-minute sessions twice a day, always calm, always consistent. He'd learned Gunnar's triggers, sudden movements, loud voices, anyone approaching from behind. He'd learned his tells, the way his ears went flat before he growled, the way his weight shifted onto his back legs before he lunged. But he'd also learned something else. Gunnar was listening, not just to commands, to tone, to intention, like he was searching for something familiar in Jake's voice. That Tuesday, Jake brought something new. A tennis ball. Found this in the evidence locker, he said, holding it up. Some kid's backpack. Figured you might... He tossed it gently through the bars. Gunnar flinched, then stared at the ball like it was a live grenade. Jake's stomach sank. It's okay, he said quickly. Just a toy. Nothing scary. But Gunnar wasn't scared. He was... remembering. Slowly, carefully, the big dog walked over to the ball, sniffed it. Then, with the gentlest movement, he picked it up in his mouth and brought it back to the bars. Jake's throat went tight. You want to play? Gunnar dropped the ball, sat, waited. Okay, Jake breathed. Okay, we can do that. He picked up the ball, tossed it again. Gunnar fetched, brought it back, again, and again, and again. By the end of the session, Gunnar's tail was wagging so hard his whole back end moved, and Jake was crying. There you are, he whispered, pressing his hand against the bars. There's the dog Danny loved. Gunnar pressed his nose to Jake's fingers. For the first time since the war, he wasn't alone. Neither of them were. The news spread through Ashford County like wildfire. By Wednesday morning, every deputy in the building had heard about the tennis ball, about the tail wag, about Jake Morrison sitting on the floor outside a kennel at midnight talking to a dog everyone had written off as a lost cause. I'll be damned, Torres said, refilling his coffee in the break room. Morrison actually got through to that beast. Don't jinx it, Kelly said, scrolling through her phone. It's been 1 week, plenty of time for things to go sideways. She was right to be cautious. What none of them knew was that across town in a small ranch house with peeling yellow paint, A woman named Sarah Carter was staring at a letter she'd received that morning from the Ashford County Sheriff's Department. "Mom." Her son's voice drifted from the living room. "What's wrong?" Sarah folded the letter quickly, shoving it into her purse. "Nothing, baby. Just junk mail." But it wasn't junk mail. It was a notification. The dog her husband had died beside was currently housed at the county facility. And due to new regulations about next-of-kin notification for military working dogs, she had the right to visit him before any decisions about his future were made. Sarah had no intention of visiting. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget the war, forget the uniform in the closet. She couldn't bring herself to donate, forget the way Danny used to smell like sand and gun oil when he video called from overseas. Seeing his dog would break her all over again. "Mom!" Tommy appeared in the doorway, clutching his backpack. He was small for 8, with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, sweetheart." "Did Dad have a dog when he was a soldier?" Sarah's breath caught. "Where did you hear that?" "Casey's dad is a deputy. He said there's a police dog at the station that used to work with soldiers. I just thought—" Tommy looked down. "I thought maybe Dad knew him." Sarah's hands trembled. "Finish your breakfast. Bus comes in 10 minutes. Palms." "But Mom." "Now, Tommy." He left, shoulders slumped, and Sarah pressed her palms against the kitchen counter, trying to breathe through the tightness in her chest. She couldn't do this. She couldn't face that dog. Couldn't face the memories. But as she watched her son trudge out to the bus stop, something Danny used to say echoed in her mind. The hardest right thing is still the right thing. Sarah grabbed her keys. Jake was running Gunner through basic commands when his radio crackled. "Morrison, you got a visitor at the front desk." He pressed the button. "Can it wait? I'm in the middle of a session." "It's Sarah Carter, Danny Carter's widow." Jake's hand froze on the radio. Gunner, sensing the shift in energy, whined softly. "Tell her I'll be right there," Jake said. He looked down at the dog, who was watching him with those intelligent amber eyes. "Big moment, buddy. Your family's here." Gunner's ears perked up at the word family, and something in Jake's chest ached. He didn't know if this was going to be a reunion or a goodbye. Sarah stood in the lobby, arms crossed tight across her chest like armor. She was 32, but looked older, lines around her eyes that came from crying, not laughing. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore the same clothes she'd thrown on that morning, jeans, a faded college sweatshirt, sneakers with mud on the toes. Jake recognized grief when he saw it. He wore his own like a second skin. "Mrs. Carter." He extended his hand. "I'm Jake Morrison. I've been working with Gunner." She didn't take his hand. "I didn't come here to see him. I came here to tell you to stop sending me letters." Jake lowered his arm slowly. "I didn't send any letters, ma'am. That would have been administration." "Well, tell administration I don't want updates. I don't want visitation rights. I don't want anything to do with that dog." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I can't." She pressed her fingers to her eyes. "I can't look at him without seeing Danny." "I understand," Jake said quietly. "Do you?" Sarah's eyes flashed. "Do you understand what it's like to get a knock on your door at 6 a.m. and see 2 officers standing there with their hats in their hands? Do you understand what it's like to tell your 7-year-old son that his daddy's never coming home?" "No," Jake admitted. "I don't understand that, but I understand loss, and I understand that sometimes the thing we're most afraid of is the thing we need most." Sarah laughed bitterly. "That's real poetic, Officer Morrison, but you don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not." Jake gestured to the hallway. "But Gunner's been alone for 3 years, same as you. And I think—" He paused. "I think maybe Danny would want you both to stop punishing yourselves for surviving." Sarah's face went white. "How dare you?" "I'm not trying to hurt you," Jake said. "I'm trying to help." I don't need help. Sarah turned to leave. I need everyone to let my family move on. Carter, wait. She stopped, hand on the door. Jake took a breath. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Come see him for 5 minutes, and if you walk away, I'll make sure you never get another letter. Sarah stood there, shoulders shaking. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What if I can't handle it? Then I'll be right there, Jake said. And we'll walk away together. She turned slowly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, terrified. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. The walk to the K-9 wing felt like a funeral march. Sarah's footsteps echoed too loud on the tile. Her breathing came shallow and fast. Twice she almost turned back, and twice Jake gave her the space to choose. She chose to keep going. When they reached the observation window, Jake stopped. He's in there. You can look through the glass first if you want. No pressure to go inside. Sarah stepped forward on legs that felt like water. Through the window, she could see him. Bigger than she remembered from the photos Danny had sent. Darker fur. Scars along his shoulder and back leg. He was lying down, head on his paws, looking so much older than the young, eager dog who'd posed with her husband in desert fatigues. Oh, God, Sarah breathed. Gunner's head lifted. His ears swiveled toward the window like he'd heard her voice through the reinforced glass. Then he stood, walked to the window, sat down on the other side, staring directly at her. Sarah's knees buckled. Jake caught her elbow, steadying her. He knows you, Jake said softly. That's impossible, Sarah whispered. He's never met me. Danny shipped out before we got married. The dog was already overseas. Doesn't matter. Jake watched Gunner, whose tail had started a slow, uncertain wag. Dogs don't just remember faces. They remember scent, voice, energy. Danny talked about you over there, didn't he? Sarah nodded, tears streaming now. Every night. He'd video call, and he'd tell me about his day, and Gunner would always be right there beside him. Sometimes Danny would hold the phone down so I could see him. She laughed through her tears. He was so proud of that dog. Said Gunner saved his life more times than he could count. Do you want to go in? Jake asked. Sarah wiped her face. I don't know if I can. You don't have to decide right now. We can just stand here. They stood in silence, Sarah crying quietly. Gunner watching through the glass with eyes that held too much understanding for an animal. Finally, Sarah spoke. Danny used to say Gunner understood him better than most people did, that they had this connection that didn't need words. She pressed her palm against the window. I thought he was exaggerating. Military guys always talk like that about their dogs. He wasn't exaggerating, Jake said. I've been working with Gunner for a week, and I've seen it. He's not just smart, he's emotionally intuitive. He reads people like a book. What's he reading right now? Sarah asked. Jake watched Gunner's posture, the way he sat perfectly still, except for that slow tail wag, the way his eyes stayed locked on Sarah's face. Hope, Jake said. He's reading Hope. Sarah let out a sob. I came here to tell you to put him down. Jake's stomach dropped. What? That's why I came. Sarah turned to face him, her face ravaged by grief. I thought if he was gone, I could finally stop remembering. Stop dreaming about Danny. Stop waking up reaching for someone who's never coming back. She looked back at the window. But I can't do it. I can't kill Danny's dog. You're not killing him, Jake said firmly. You're giving him a chance. At what? What kind of life does he have locked in a cage? That's up to you, Jake said. Mrs. Carter Gunner's making progress, but he needs more than training. He needs a reason to come back all the way. He needs family. Sarah shook her head. I can't take him home. I can barely hold myself together. I have a son who needs me. I can't. I'm not asking you to take him home, Jake interrupted. Not yet. I'm asking you to visit. Once a week. Twice a week. Whatever you can handle. Let him see you. Let him remember that he's not just a soldier, he's family. Sarah looked at Gunnar again. The dog had pressed his nose against the glass, leaving a wet smudge. His eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart ache. "What if I make him worse?" she whispered. "You won't," Jake said. "Trust me." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Okay, 1 visit a week. That's all I can promise." "That's enough," Jake said. "Do you want to try going in today?" Sarah's eyes went wide. "Today now. Only if you're ready." She looked at Gunnar, looked at Jake, looked down at her shaking hands. 5 minutes, she said. "Just 5. Jake smiled. "Just 5. He opened the kennel door slowly, explaining the protocol as he went. Sarah had to stay calm, move slow, let Gunnar approach her on his terms. No sudden movements. No direct eye contact at first. And if Gunnar showed any signs of aggression, Jake would step in immediately. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. When the door swung open, Gunnar stood up. His body went rigid, every muscle coiled tight. For a second, Jake's hand moved to his radio. Then Gunnar's nose started working. He inhaled deeply, scenting the air, and his entire demeanor shifted. The tension melted from his shoulders. His ears came forward, and he took 1 step toward Sarah, then another, slow and careful, like he was approaching something sacred. Sarah held perfectly still, tears pouring down her face. Gunnar stopped 3 feet away, sat down, and made a sound Jake had never heard before, a soft, almost crying whine that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "It's okay," Sarah whispered. "I'm here. I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." Gunnar's tail began to wag harder. He crept forward inch by inch until his massive head was within reach. Sarah's hand trembled as she extended it. "Danny loved you so much. He talked about you all the time. He said—" Her voice broke. "He said you were the best partner he ever had." Gunnar leaned forward and pressed his forehead against her palm. Sarah collapsed to her knees sobbing, and Gunnar moved into her arms, letting her hold him, his own body shaking with emotion. Jake turned away, giving them privacy, his own eyes burning. 5 minutes turned into 20. When Sarah finally emerged, her face was blotchy and swollen, but something in her expression had changed. The hardness was gone. In its place was something raw and real. "Same time next week?" Jake asked. Sarah nodded. "Same time next week." As she walked away, Jake returned to the kennel. Gunnar was lying down again, but his eyes were brighter, alert, alive. "Good boy," Jake murmured. "You did real good." Gunnar's tail thumped twice against the floor. Progress. The visits became routine. Every Tuesday at 3 p.m., Sarah would show up, and Jake would let her into the kennel. Sometimes she'd sit quietly telling Gunnar about her week. Sometimes she'd cry. Sometimes she'd just hold him. By the 3rd week, she brought something new. "I found this in Danny's things," she said, pulling out a worn tennis ball. "He sent me a picture once, said it was Gunnar's favorite toy." Jake took the ball, examining it. It was faded, covered in teeth marks, the felt nearly rubbed off. "Want to give it to him?" Jake asked. Sarah shook her head. "You do it. He trusts you." Jake tossed the ball into the kennel. Gunnar's reaction was immediate. He grabbed it, brought it to Sarah, and dropped it at her feet. Sarah laughed, actually laughed, for the first time since Danny died. "He remembers," she said, throwing the ball. "Oh my God, he remembers." They played fetch for 15 minutes, Sarah's laughter mixing with Gunnar's happy barks, and Jake felt something dangerous settle in his chest. This was working. They were healing each other. He just hoped it would be enough when the real test came. The call came on a Thursday. "Morrison Chief wants you in his office, now." Jake's stomach dropped. He found Warren behind his desk, arms crossed, face grim. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "County Commissioner called. Someone filed a formal complaint about Gunnar." "What kind of complaint?" "Anonymous tip. Says the dog's dangerous, that he's a liability, that we're wasting taxpayer money on a lost cause. Warren leaned back. They're pushing for immediate euthanasia. No more waiting. No more second chances. Jake's blood went cold. You can't let them do that. I don't have a choice. The commissioner has authority over animal control decisions. He's made progress. I know he has, Warren interrupted. I've seen the reports, but progress isn't enough. They want guarantees, and I can't give them that. Jake's hands clenched into fists. How long do we have? Hearing scheduled for Monday. You'll have a chance to present evidence, but Morrison... Warren's expression softened. It's not looking good. Jake stood there, mind racing. 4 days. He had 4 days to prove Gunner was worth saving. I need to make a call, he said. Warren nodded. Do what you have to do. Sarah picked up on the third ring. Hello. It's Jake Morrison. We have a problem. He explained the situation quickly, the complaint, the hearing, the timeline. Sarah listened in silence. What do you need from me? She asked when he finished. I need you to testify. Tell them what Gunner means to your family. Tell them about Danny. Jake, I can barely get through a visit without falling apart. You want me to stand up in front of a room full of strangers and... I know what I'm asking, Jake said. And I know it's not fair. But Gunner needs you. Danny's son needs to know his father's partner didn't die in a cage. Sarah was quiet for so long, Jake thought she'd hung up. Tommy doesn't know about Gunner, she said finally. What? I never told him. I couldn't. I didn't want him getting attached to something else he'd lose. She exhaled shakily. But you're right. Danny would want Tommy to know. So you'll testify? I'll do better than that, Sarah said. I'll bring Tommy to meet him. Jake's throat tightened. Mrs. Carter. Sarah, she corrected. And don't thank me yet. If this goes wrong, if that dog scares my son... He won't, Jake promised. I'll be there every second. You better be, Sarah said, and hung up. Jake stared at his phone, heart pounding. This was either going to save Gunner's life or destroy what little progress they'd made. He prayed it was the former. Saturday afternoon, Jake waited outside the K-9 wing, checking his watch every 30 seconds. Sarah had promised to bring Tommy at 2 p.m. It was 2:07. At 2:12, the door opened. Sarah walked in, holding the hand of a small boy with dark hair and wide, nervous eyes. Tommy, she said gently. This is Officer Morrison. He's the one I told you about. Jake crouched down to the boy's level. Hey, Tommy, your mom says you've got some questions about your dad. Tommy nodded, not speaking. Your dad was one of the bravest men I never met, Jake said. And he had a partner who was just as brave. You want to meet him? Tommy looked up at his mother. Sarah squeezed his hand. It's okay, baby. I've met him. He's a good dog. A dog? Tommy's eyes lit up. Dad had a dog. The best dog. Sarah said, her voice thick. His name is Gunner. Jake led them to the observation window. Gunner was alert, pacing slightly, sensing new people. Tommy pressed his face to the glass. He's huge. 92 pounds, Jake said. But he's gentle. Your dad trained him to protect people, not hurt them. Can I go in? Tommy asked. Sarah started to protest, but Jake spoke first. How about we try something first? We'll see if Gunner wants to meet you. He opened the viewing panel, the one that allowed sound to travel between rooms. Gunner, Jake called. Come here, buddy. The dog trotted over, ears forward. There's someone I want you to meet, Jake said. He looked at Tommy. Talk to him. Let him hear your voice. Tommy glanced at his mom, who nodded encouragingly. Hi. Tommy said, his voice small. I'm Tommy. You knew my dad. Gunner's head tilted. His tail began a slow wag. Mom says you and Dad were best friends. Tommy continued, gaining confidence. She says you saved a lot of people together. Gunner moved closer to the panel nose working, and then he did something that made everyone's breath catch. He sat down and lifted his right paw, the exact gesture Danny had taught him to greet family members. Sarah covered her mouth, sobbing. Tommy looked confused. "What's he doing?" the boy asked. "He's saying hello." Jake said, his own voice rough. "Your dad taught him that. It means he recognizes you as family." Tommy's eyes went wide. "He knows I'm Dad's son." "Dogs are smarter than people give them credit for," Jake said, "especially this one." "Can I shake his paw?" Tommy asked. Jake looked at Sarah. She was crying but nodding. "Let's try," Jake said. Then, the moment Tommy entered the kennel, Gunner's entire body language changed. All the wariness, all the guardedness vanished. He approached the boy with the same careful gentleness he'd shown Sarah, moving slowly, reading every signal. Tommy stood, frozen eyes huge, as 92 pounds of German Shepherd stopped 3 feet away and sat down. "What do I do?" Tommy whispered. "Hold out your hand," Jake said softly. "Let him sniff you." Tommy extended a trembling hand. Gunner leaned forward, nose working, and then his tail started wagging so hard his whole back end moved. "He likes me," Tommy breathed. "He loves you." Sarah corrected, tears streaming. "You smell like home to him." Gunner moved closer, pressing his head against Tommy's chest, and the boy's arms came up instinctively, wrapping around the dog's neck. "Hi, Gunner," Tommy whispered. "I wish I met you before. I wish Dad was here." Gunner made that soft, whining sound, the one that sounded almost like crying, and pressed closer. Jake had to turn away again, the emotion in the room too much to witness without breaking down himself. When Tommy finally pulled back, his face was wet, but smiling. "Mom, can we take him home?" Sarah's smile faltered. "Baby, it's not that simple." "Why not? He's Dad's dog. He belongs with us." "He's not well yet," Sarah explained carefully. "He's been through a lot, just like we have. Officer Morrison is helping him get better." Tommy looked at Jake. "How much longer?" Jake crouched down. "That's what we're trying to figure out, buddy. There are some people who think Gunner can't get better. They want to—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "They want to give up on him." Tommy's face hardened with a determination that looked exactly like his father's. "That's stupid. He's not mean. He's just sad." "You're right," Jake said. "But we need to prove that to the people in charge. There's a meeting on Monday where they'll decide what happens to Gunner. Your mom's going to help, but—" He hesitated. "It would mean a lot if you wanted to say something too." Tommy looked at his mother. "Can I—" Sarah's hands trembled. "Are you sure it might be scary? There'll be a lot of adults." "Dad wasn't scared." Tommy interrupted. "Gunner wasn't scared. I'm not going to be scared either." Sarah pulled her son close, kissing the top of his head. "Okay, baby. We'll do it together." Jake felt hope bloom in his chest for the first time since Warren had delivered the bad news. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Monday morning arrived too fast. The hearing room was packed. County commissioners, animal control officers, department brass, and a handful of citizens who'd shown up after word spread on social media. The anonymous complainant had remained anonymous, but their influence was clear. The energy in the room was hostile, skeptical, already decided. Jake sat at a table in the front with Chief Warren, his hands clenched under the table. Across the room, Sarah sat with Tommy, the boy looking small and terrified in his Sunday best. Commissioner Patricia Rhodes called the meeting to order. She was 58, steel gray hair, no-nonsense expression. "We're here to determine the fate of a German Shepherd currently housed at Ashford County Sheriff's Department. The dog, designated as Gunner, has a history of violent behavior and multiple complaints. Officer Morrison, you're representing the case for rehabilitation. You have 15 minutes. Jake stood his notes, suddenly feeling inadequate. Thank you, Commissioner. Gunner is a 7-year-old military working dog with 3 tours of service in Afghanistan. He has 83 confirmed explosive detections, saved multiple lives, and served with distinction until his handler, Sergeant Daniel Carter, was killed in action 3 years ago. A murmur rippled through the room. Jake continued. Since his handler's death, Gunner has exhibited signs of severe PTSD. He's been misunderstood, mishandled, and written off as irredeemable. But in the past 3 weeks, I've worked with him daily, and I've seen significant progress. He's responsive to commands, he's bonding with humans again, and most importantly, Jake looked at Sarah and Tommy. He's reconnecting with his fallen handler's family. Commissioner Rhodes frowned. Sergeant Carter's family is here? Sarah stood slowly, her voice shaking. Yes, ma'am. I'm Sarah Carter, Danny's widow, and this is our son Tommy. The room went silent. Mrs. Carter. Rhodes said, her tone softening slightly. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not sure what bearing your presence has on this case. Gunner isn't just a dog, Sarah said, gaining strength. He's the last living connection my son has to his father. Danny died overseas when Tommy was 5. My son barely remembers him, but Gunner does, and watching them together. Her voice cracked. It's like having a piece of Danny back. Tommy stood up beside his mother. Can I say something? Rhodes hesitated. Young man, this is an official proceeding. I know. Tommy said, his voice small but steady. But Gunner's my family, and families don't give up on each other. Jake's heart clenched. Rhodes looked uncomfortable but nodded. Go ahead. Tommy walked to the front of the room, Jake guiding him gently to the microphone. My dad died before I really knew him. Tommy said, his words echoing in the silent room. I have pictures and videos, but I don't remember what he sounded like or what his hugs felt like. But when I met Gunner, he looked at me like he knew me, like he loved me, because he loved my dad, and I'm part of my dad. Tommy's voice wavered. If you kill Gunner, it's like killing the last part of my dad that's still here. Please don't do that. The room was deadly silent. Several people were wiping their eyes. Even Rhodes looked shaken. Thank you, Tommy, she said quietly. You can sit down. But before Tommy could move, the door burst open. A man in an expensive suit strode in holding a briefcase. Commissioner Rhodes, I'm here representing the Ashford County Taxpayers Association. We demand this animal be put down immediately. Jake's blood ran cold. He recognized the man, Gerald Finch, local real estate developer notorious for filing frivolous lawsuits. Mr. Finch, Rhodes said, clearly annoyed. This isn't your hearing. It is when taxpayer money is being wasted on a violent animal, Finch snapped. He pulled out a folder, slapping it on the table. I have documentation of 3 separate attacks, $18,000 in medical bills, and a pending lawsuit from a handler who will never work with dogs again. This isn't about feelings, it's about liability. That handler was attacking him, Jake said, standing up. The dog was defending himself. So you admit he's violent, Finch shot back. I admit he was traumatized and scared. There's a difference. Finch turned to the commissioner. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Emotional decisions instead of rational ones. That dog is a lawsuit waiting to happen, and when some child gets mauled because we chose feelings over facts. Gunner would never hurt a kid, Tommy shouted, his face red. He's gentle. He's my friend. Son, you've known that animal for what, a week? Finch said condescendingly. That's not enough time to— Don't talk to my son like that, Sarah snapped, standing up. The room erupted into arguments. Rhodes banged her gavel. Order, everyone sit down. The noise died reluctantly. Rhodes looked exhausted. Here's what's going to happen, she said. We'll adjourn for 1 hour. During that time, I want documentation of Gunner's progress from Officer Morrison, medical evaluations from the vet, and a formal statement from Mrs. Carter about her willingness to assume responsibility for the dog's future. "Mr. Finch, your objections are noted, but unless you have standing beyond taxpayer concern, you're dismissed." Finch's face reddened, but he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out. As the room cleared, Jake turned to Sarah. "That was incredible, both of you." Tommy was crying now, the adrenaline wearing off. Sarah held him close. "Is Gunner going to die?" Tommy asked. "Not if I can help it," Jake promised. But as they left the room, he caught Warren's expression, and he knew they were still losing. The hour felt like a lifetime. Jake paced the hallway outside the hearing room, phone pressed to his ear, trying to get the veterinarian to send over Gunner's medical records faster. Sarah sat on a bench with Tommy, the boy's head resting on her shoulder, exhausted from the emotional testimony. "Morrison!" Warren appeared from around the corner, his expression grave. "We need to talk." Jake hung up. "What now?" Warren pulled him aside, lowering his voice. "I just got off the phone with the county attorney. Finch isn't working alone. He's got 2 commissioners already on his side, and Rhodes is on the fence. They're leaning toward euthanasia. We haven't even presented the medical evidence yet." "It won't matter," Warren interrupted. "Finch is threatening a lawsuit if anything happens with that dog. Says he'll personally sue the county, me and you, for negligence. The commissioners are scared." Jake's hands balled into fists. "So they're going to kill an innocent animal because some rich developer wants to make a point?" "They're going to do what protects their jobs," Warren said quietly. "I'm sorry, Jake. I fought for this. But unless something major changes in the next 30 minutes, Gunner's done." Jake leaned against the wall, feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. "There has to be something we can do." "There is," Warren said. "But you're not gonna like it." "Tell me." Warren hesitated. If Gunner had a certified service placement lined up somewhere outside county jurisdiction, they couldn't touch him. It would have to be official, documented, approved by a legitimate organization. "Where the hell am I supposed to find that in 30 minutes? "You can't," Warren admitted. "I'm just telling you what the loophole is. Maybe if we ask for an extension, buy ourselves a few days." "They won't give us a few days," Jake said. "You heard Finch. He wants this over today." Warren's radio crackled. "We're reconvening in 5 minutes. Jake looked over at Sarah and Tommy. The boy had fallen asleep, his small face peaceful for the first time all day. Sarah met Jake's eyes, and he saw the same terror he felt reflected back at him. She mouthed, "What do we do?" Jake had no answer. They filed back into the hearing room 4 minutes later. The commissioners were already seated, their expressions carefully neutral. Finch sat in the back row, arms crossed, looking smug. Rhodes called the meeting to order. "Officer Morrison, I've reviewed the documentation you submitted during the recess. The medical reports show improvement in Gunner's behavior, and the veterinarian's assessment is generally positive. However," Jake's stomach dropped at that word. "However," Rhodes continued, "the liability concerns raised by Mr. Finch cannot be ignored. The county has a responsibility to protect its citizens, and while I understand the emotional attachment Mrs. Carter and her son have formed, we cannot make decisions based solely on sentiment." "Commissioner, with all due respect," Jake started. Rhodes held up her hand. "I'm not finished. After consulting with the county attorney, we've determined that the safest course of action is to humanely euthanize the animal within 48 hours. Tommy jerked awake at the word euthanize, his eyes going wide with horror. "No!" Sarah grabbed her son, trying to calm him, but Tommy was crying now, loud broken sobs that echoed through the chamber. "You can't kill him," Tommy screamed. "He didn't do anything wrong. Young man, please." Rhodes tried. "My dad died for this country and you're gonna kill his best friend?" Tommy's voice cracked. "That's not fair. That's not right." Jake's throat closed up. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Then Sarah stood still, holding Tommy, her own face wet with tears. "If you do this, you're not just killing a dog. You're telling every military family in this county that their sacrifices don't matter, that their loved ones are disposable. Mrs. Carter, I understand your pain. No, you don't, Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage now. You sit up there in your safe office, making decisions about things you've never experienced. My husband died in the dirt halfway around the world, and all I have left of him is memories and photographs and one loyal animal who loved him as much as I did. And you want to take that away because you're scared of a lawsuit. The room was dead silent. Even Finch looked uncomfortable. Rhodes opened her mouth to respond, but the door burst open again. A woman in her 60s rushed in, breathing hard like she'd been running. She wore a simple button-down shirt with a logo Jake didn't recognize and carried a leather folder. Commissioner Rhodes, the woman said, her voice urgent. My name is Margaret Walsh. I'm the director of Guardian Angel Service Dog Foundation. I'm here about Gunner. Jake's heart leaped. Warren shot him a look that said, Did you call her? Jake shook his head, just as confused. Rhodes frowned. Ms. Walsh, this is a closed hearing. I know, and I apologize for the intrusion, but I've been following this case on social media. Margaret moved to the front, opening her folder. I have a certified service placement offer for Gunner effective immediately. We're a nationally recognized nonprofit that rehabilitates military and police dogs for PTSD service work. We have a waiting list of veterans who desperately need what Gunner can provide. Finch stood up. This is ridiculous. You can't just walk in here with some last-minute, I can and I am, Margaret said firmly. She handed documents to Rhodes. Everything's in order. Federal guidelines state certification liability insurance that covers up to $5 million. If Ashford County releases Gunner to our care, all legal responsibility transfers to our organization. Rhodes scanned the papers, her expression unreadable. This seems legitimate, but nothing. Margaret interrupted. That dog out there saved American lives. He served his country with honor, and he's suffering from wounds just as real as any soldier's. If you euthanize him, you're sending a message that mental health doesn't matter, that PTSD is a death sentence. Is that really what Ashford County wants to be known for? Jake could have kissed her. Sarah was crying again, but this time with hope. Rhodes looked at the other commissioners, having a silent conversation. Finally she spoke. Mr. Finch, does the Taxpayers Association have any objection to this placement? It removes all liability from the county. Finch's jaw worked. He knew he'd been outmaneuvered, but he couldn't object without looking like a monster. No objection, he said stiffly, as long as the animal is removed from county property. Mrs. Carter, Rhodes said, this placement would mean Gunner goes into a training program for at least 6 months, possibly longer. You wouldn't have regular access to him during that time. Are you comfortable with that? Sarah looked at Tommy, then at Jake, then back at the commissioner. If it means he lives, yes, absolutely. Rhodes took a deep breath. Then by the authority vested in this commission, I'm approving the transfer of Gunner to Guardian Angel Service Dog Foundation, effective immediately. Officer Morrison, you'll coordinate the transition. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down and the room exploded into conversation. Tommy threw his arms around his mother. He's gonna be okay. He's gonna be okay, baby, Sarah sobbed. Jake turned to Margaret Walsh, who was packing up her folder. How did you know about this hearing? Margaret smiled. Social media's a powerful thing, Officer Morrison. A friend of mine saw the posts about Tommy's testimony, did some digging, found out what was happening today. I got in my car and drove 2 hours to get here. You're an angel, Jake said, his voice thick. I'm a dog lover, Margaret corrected, and I hate bullies. She glanced at Finch, who was sulking in the corner. Besides, from what I've read, Gunner's exactly the kind of dog we need. Smart, loyal, trauma-bonded. With the right training, he could help a veteran who's struggling just like he is. When do you need him? Jake asked. Is tomorrow too soon? Jake's chest tightened. He'd gotten so attached in 3 weeks, the thought of saying goodbye hurt more than he expected. But this wasn't about him. Tomorrow's perfect, he said. That evening, Jake sat outside Gunner's kennel one last time. The dog was lying down, head on his paws, watching Jake with those intelligent, amber eyes. "Big day tomorrow, buddy," Jake said softly. "You're going somewhere better. Somewhere you can really heal." Gunner's tail thumped once. "I'm gonna miss you," Jake admitted, his throat tight. "I know that's selfish. I know this is what's best for you. But the truth is, you helped me as much as I helped you." He paused, wiping his eyes. "I forgot what it felt like to fight for something that mattered. To believe something broken could be fixed. You reminded me." Gunner stood up, walked to the bars and pressed his nose through the gap. Jake reached out, letting the dog sniff his hand, then gently scratch behind his ears. "You're gonna do great things," Jake whispered. "Danny would be so proud." The door opened behind him. Sarah and Tommy walked in, the boy carrying a small backpack. "Hope we're not interrupting," Sarah said. "Not at all." Jake stood up, wiping his face quickly. "Come to say goodbye." Tommy nodded, looking miserable. "Mom said he's leaving tomorrow." "He is," Jake confirmed. "But it's a good thing, Tommy. He's going somewhere that can help him become a service dog. He'll get to help other veterans, just like he helped your dad." "Can I give him something?" Tommy asked. "Of course." Tommy unzipped his backpack and pulled out a worn collar. It was faded green with a name tag that read SGDT, Daniel Carter K9 Unit. Jake's breath caught. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "It was Dad's," Tommy explained. "Mom kept it in a box with his other stuff. I want Gunner to have it so he doesn't forget." Jake took the collar, carefully holding it like the sacred thing it was. "Tommy, are you sure this is really special?" "I know," Tommy said. "That's why Gunner should have it. He was Dad's best friend. Best friends share things." Jake looked at Sarah, who nodded through her tears. "Okay," Jake said. "Let's put it on him." They entered the kennel together. Gunner greeted Tommy with his usual gentle enthusiasm, tail wagging, pressing his big head against the boy's chest. Tommy hugged him fiercely. "I'm gonna miss you so much," Tommy whispered. "But Officer Morrison says you're gonna help other people now, other soldiers who need you." Jake carefully removed Gunner's current collar and replaced it with Danny's. The moment he fastened it, Gunner went perfectly still. His nose dropped to the fabric, inhaling deeply, and a sound came out of him that made everyone's heart break, a low, mournful whine that seemed to hold 3 years of grief. "He remembers?" Sarah breathed. Gunner looked up at her, then at Tommy, then back at the collar, and his tail began to wag slowly, like he understood that this was a gift, a blessing, a promise that Danny hadn't forgotten him. Tommy buried his face in Gunner's fur. "You're the best dog in the whole world. I love you." Gunner licked the boy's face, gentle and sweet, and Jake had to turn away before he lost it completely. They stayed for an hour playing fetch with Danny's old tennis ball, telling Gunner stories about his handler, laughing through their tears. When it was finally time to leave, Tommy made Gunner promise to be good. "You gotta work hard and help people, okay?" Tommy said seriously. "That's what heroes do." Gunner sat down and lifted his paw, that same gesture Danny had taught him. Tommy shook it solemnly. "Deal." Margaret Walsh arrived at 9 a.m. the next morning with a professional transport van and 2 assistants. She spent 20 minutes with Gunner, assessing his behavior, his responsiveness, his overall condition. "He's perfect," she told Jake. "Exactly what we need." "He's been through hell," Jake warned. "He's made progress, but he's still got triggers. Loud noises, helicopters, sudden movements." "We know how to work with combat trauma," Margaret assured him. "We've rehabilitated over 300 military dogs. Gunner's in good hands." Jake wanted to believe her. He had to believe her. They loaded Gunner into the van slowly, carefully. The dog hesitated at the entrance, looking back at Jake with something like confusion in his eyes. "It's okay, buddy," Jake said, his voice breaking. Go on. This is your next mission. Gunnar climbed into the van and settled onto the padded floor. Margaret's assistant secured him, gently speaking in soft, reassuring tones. We'll send you updates, Margaret promised Jake. Weekly reports, photos, the whole thing. And once he's certified, if Mrs. Carter wants to visit, we can arrange that. Thank you, Jake managed. For everything. Margaret smiled. Thank you for not giving up on him. The van doors closed. Through the window, Jake could see Gunnar watching him, and he swore the dog knew exactly what was happening. The engine started. The van began to pull away. Jake stood there until it disappeared around the corner, feeling like he'd just lost another partner. Warren walked up beside him, quiet for a moment. You did good, Morrison. Doesn't feel good, Jake said. It never does, Warren agreed. But that dog's alive because of you. That family got closure because of you. Sometimes that's all we can ask for. Jake nodded, not trusting his voice. Take a few days off, Warren said. You've earned it. Thanks, Chief. Warren headed back inside, leaving Jake alone in the parking lot. The morning sun was warm on his face, but he felt cold inside. He'd done the right thing. He knew that. So why did it hurt so much? 3 weeks passed. Jake threw himself into work, extra shifts, volunteering for every call, anything to keep his mind busy. He'd gotten Margaret's updates, and they were positive. Gunnar was adjusting well to the program, responding to his new trainers, showing remarkable progress. Jake should have been happy. Instead, he felt hollow. Kelly noticed first. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Jake asked, not looking up from his paperwork. The thing where you pretend you're fine, but you're actually falling apart. She sat on the edge of his desk. Talk to me. Nothing to talk about. You miss him. Jake's pen stopped moving. It's been 3 weeks. I'm over it. Liar. Kelly's voice was gentle. Jake, it's okay to admit you cared about that dog. It doesn't make you weak. I don't want to care, Jake said, his jaw tight. Caring hurts. Losing hurts. I'm tired of hurting. Then you're in the wrong job, Kelly said bluntly. We're cops. We deal with hurt every single day. But that doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we care harder. Love, fiercer fight, stronger, because that hurt means we're still human. Jake finally looked at her. When did you get so wise? Always been wise. You just don't listen. She stood up. Go see him. What? Go see Gunnar. Margaret's facility is 2 hours away. Take a Saturday drive up there, see how he's doing. You need closure as much as that dog does. Jake shook his head. He's moved on. He doesn't need me showing up and confusing him. Or maybe you need him more than you think, Kelly said. She dropped a piece of paper on his desk. That's Margaret's address. Call her first. But go. She left before he could argue. Jake stared at the address for a long time. Then he picked up his phone. Saturday morning found Jake driving north on Highway 77, his truck rattling over the old asphalt, coffee in the cup holder, nerves in his stomach. Margaret had sounded delighted when he called, insisting he come visit, saying Gunnar would be thrilled. Jake wasn't so sure. The Guardian Angel facility was impressive, 15 acres of open land, training grounds, obstacle courses, and a main building that looked more like a home than an institution. Margaret met him at the entrance, her smile warm. Officer Morrison. Right on time. Jake, please, he said, shaking her hand. Jake it is. Come on, I'll give you the tour. She walked him through the facility, explaining their process. Dog stayed for a minimum of 6 months, learning specialized tasks. PTSD alert, anxiety, interruption, nightmare intervention, crowd navigation. They worked with certified trainers who understood combat trauma because many of them were veterans themselves. It's not about breaking the dog's spirit, Margaret explained. It's about channeling their trauma into purpose, teaching them that their pain can help someone else heal. How's Gunnar doing? Jake asked, unable to wait any longer. Margaret's smile widened. See for yourself." She led him to an outdoor training area where a dozen dogs were working with their handlers, and there in the far corner, Jake saw him. Gunner looked different, healthier. His coat shone in the sunlight and his eyes were alert and focused. He was working with a young trainer, practicing complex commands, moving with confidence Jake had never seen before. "He's thriving," Margaret said softly. "Best student we've had in years." Jake's chest ached with pride and loss all tangled together. "Can I?" "Of course," Margaret called out. "Elena, bring Gunner over." The trainer waved and started walking Gunner toward them. The dog moved obediently at her side, perfectly healed until he saw Jake. Gunner froze. His ears shot forward. His whole body went rigid. Then he pulled so hard he nearly yanked Elena off her feet. "Gunner, heel," Elena commanded, but it was useless. Gunner was already running a full sprint across the training ground, and Jake barely had time to brace himself before 92 pounds of pure joy crashed into him. The dog was whining, crying, spinning in circles, tail wagging so hard Jake thought it might fly off. He jumped up, paws on Jake's shoulders, licking his face frantically, making sounds Jake had never heard, pure, unfiltered happiness. "Hey, buddy!" Jake laughed, tears streaming down his face. "Hey, I missed you too." Gunner dropped down, pressed against Jake's legs, then jumped up again, unable to contain his excitement. Other dogs and trainers had stopped to watch, smiling at the reunion. Margaret walked over, laughing. "I think he remembers you." "Yeah," Jake managed, hugging Gunner's neck. "I think he does." They sat together in the grass, Gunner refusing to leave Jake's side, pressing as close as physically possible. Jake scratched behind his ears, ran his hands through his fur, relearning the weight and warmth of him. "He's been good?" Jake asked. "Exceptional," Elena said, joining them. "He's already mastered basic service tasks. We're starting to think about placement options." Jake's stomach dropped. "Already?" "He's a fast learner," Margaret said. "And we have a veteran who's been waiting 18 months for the right match. Former Marine combat PTSD lost his unit in an ambush. He and Gunner have similar trauma profiles. We think they'd be good for each other." Jake knew this was coming. Knew this was the whole point. But hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. "When?" he asked. 2 months, maybe 3, Margaret said. "We want to be sure Gunner's ready, and the veteran needs to complete some prep training first." Jake nodded, unable to speak. They spent 2 hours together. Jake watched Gunner work, saw the confidence and purpose Margaret had talked about, the way he responded to commands with eagerness instead of fear. This was what healing looked like. This was what success looked like. It was beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. When it was time to leave, saying goodbye was harder than the first time. "You're doing so good, buddy," Jake whispered, holding Gunner's face in his hands. "I'm so proud of you. Danny would be so proud of you." Gunner whined softly, like he understood this was another farewell. "I'll come back," Jake promised. "Before you go to your new person, I'll come back." "Okay." Gunner licked his face one more time, and Jake had to force himself to stand up and walk away. He made it to his truck before he broke down completely. That night, Jake called Sarah. He told her about the visit, about how well Gunner was doing, about the placement in 2 months. "That's wonderful," Sarah said, but her voice was thick. "Tommy will want to know. He asks about Gunner every single day." "Margaret said you could visit too if you want." "I do," Sarah said. "We both do. Maybe next weekend." "I'll set it up," Jake promised. They were quiet for a moment, both dealing with the same complicated grief. "Jake," Sarah said finally. "Yeah. Thank you. For fighting for him. For not giving up. For—" her voice broke. "For giving us back a piece of Danny." Jake's throat closed up. "He gave me something too. Reminded me why this job matters. "You're a good man, Jake Morrison." "I'm trying to be," he said quietly. After they hung up, Jake sat on his porch, staring at the stars, thinking about second chances and broken things that heal, and the way love doesn't end just because someone's gone. Somewhere 2 hours north, Gunnar was probably sleeping on his training facility bed, dreaming whatever dogs dream. And somewhere in heaven, maybe Danny Carter was watching over them all, grateful his best friend had finally found his way home. Even if home looked different than any of them expected. Jake took a breath, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. Tomorrow, he'd go back to work. Back to the chaos and danger and heartbreak that came with the badge. But tonight, he'd sit here and be grateful. Grateful that he'd known Gunnar. Grateful he'd tried. Grateful that sometimes, against all odds, broken things really do heal. The stars shone brighter, and for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morrison believed in miracles again. But what none of them knew yet was that Gunnar's story was far from over, and the miracle they'd witnessed was about to be tested in ways no one could have imagined. 2 months came faster than anyone wanted. Jake had visited Gunnar 3 more times, each visit harder than the last. Sarah and Tommy made the trip twice, bringing Danny's old military photos, sitting with Gunnar for hours, talking about memories the dog couldn't possibly understand, but somehow did. Now it was placement day. Margaret called Jake at 7 a.m. "He's ready. The veteran arrives this afternoon. I thought you'd want to know." Jake's coffee went cold in his hand. "What's his name?" "Michael Reed. 34, former Marine Corps Sergeant, 2 tours in Fallujah. He's been on our waiting list since his wife left him last year because she couldn't handle his nightmares anymore." "You think Gunnar can help him?" "I think they need each other," Margaret said softly. "You're welcome to be here for the introduction. 2 p.m. Jake checked his watch. 7 hours. "I'll be there." He called Sarah next. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. "It's today, isn't it?" she said. "This afternoon. You want to come?" Sarah was quiet for so long, Jake thought the call had dropped. Then, "I can't. If I see him get handed off to someone else, even someone who needs him, I'll fall apart. Tommy will fall apart. We said our goodbyes last week." "I understand," Jake said, even though part of him wished she'd be there. Shared grief was easier than carrying it alone. "Jake," Sarah's voice cracked. "Promise me something. Promise me he goes to someone good. Someone who will love him the way Danny did." "I promise," Jake said. "I'll make sure of it." After they hung up, Jake sat in his empty apartment, staring at nothing. Feeling that familiar ache in his chest that came with letting go. But this was what success looked like. This was what they'd fought for. He just wished it didn't hurt so damn much. Guardian Angel Service Dog Foundation was bustling when Jake arrived. Trainers moved between buildings. Dogs barked in the distance, and Margaret stood near the main office, clipboard in hand, looking nervous. "You okay?" Jake asked. "Placements always make me anxious," Margaret admitted. "We do everything right. Assessments, compatibility testing, trial periods. But there's always that fear that something won't click." "Where's Gunnar?" "Training yard. Elena's running him through his final certification exercises." Margaret checked her watch. "Michael should be here in 20 minutes. You want to see Gunnar first?" Jake nodded, not trusting his voice. They found Gunnar working through an obstacle course, responding to Elena's commands with precision and confidence. When he completed the course, Elena praised him and his tail wagged with pride. This was a different dog than the one who'd arrived terrified and broken. This Gunnar was whole again, healed, ready. "He's incredible," Jake said. "He's a miracle," Elena corrected. She released Gunnar from his working vest, and the dog immediately spotted Jake. The transformation was instant. Gunnar's professional demeanor melted into pure joy. He bounded over, greeting Jake with his usual enthusiasm, spinning, whining, pressing against his legs. Jake crouched down, letting Gunnar overwhelm him with affection. "Hey, buddy. Big day, huh?" Gunnar licked his face tail, going wild. You're gonna meet someone new today. Jake continued, scratching behind Gunner's ears. Someone who needs you even more than I do. And I need you to be good for him, okay? I need you to do what you do best, be a hero. Gunner sat down, tilting his head like he understood every word. Jake pressed his forehead against Gunner's. I'm so proud of you. Danny would be so proud of you. A car pulled into the parking lot and Margaret tensed. That's him. Jake stood up, his heart hammering. This was it. The moment that would determine whether all their work had been worth it. Michael Reed climbed out of a beat-up Ford pickup, moving slowly, carefully, like someone who'd learned to be cautious with his body. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair cut military short and eyes that had seen too much. He wore jeans and a Marine Corps t-shirt, and his hands shook slightly as he closed the truck door. Margaret walked over to greet him. Jake watched the exchange. Margaret's warm welcome. Michael's stiff handshake, the way he kept glancing around like he was checking for threats that weren't there. PTSD. Jake recognized it immediately. Margaret led Michael over to where Jake and Gunner waited. Michael Reed, this is Officer Jake Morrison. He worked with Gunner before the dog came to us. Michael's handshake was firm but brief. Appreciate what you did for him. He did more for me than I did for him, Jake said honestly. Michael's eyes moved to Gunner, who sat calmly at Jake's side, watching the new person with cautious curiosity. That's him? That's Gunner, Margaret confirmed. Before we do introductions, I want to go over some background. Gunner's a 7-year-old military working dog. He served 3 tours in Afghanistan with a bomb detection unit. His handler, Sergeant Daniel Carter, was killed in an IED attack 3 years ago. Since then, Gunner's been struggling with severe PTSD. Michael's expression shifted, something dark and understanding crossing his face. He saw his handler die. He was 10 feet away when it happened, Jake said quietly. Michael looked at Gunner again, and this time his eyes were softer. Yeah, I get that. He's been through extensive rehabilitation, Margaret continued. He's certified for PTSD service work, nightmare interruption, anxiety alerts, crowd buffering, grounding techniques. But Michael, you need to understand something. Gunner's not fixed. He's healed enough to function, but he still has triggers. Loud noises, helicopters, sudden movements. He's not a magic cure. He's a partner. I don't need a cure, Michael said. I just need someone who understands. Margaret smiled. Then let's see if you two are a match. Jake, you want to do the introduction? Jake nodded. He'd done this before back in his K-9 unit days, introducing dogs to new handlers. But this felt different, more personal, more painful. Gunner. Jake set his voice steady. Come. Gunner stood, immediately focused on Jake. This is Michael. He's a soldier like Danny was. He needs a partner. Jake looked at Michael. Hold out your hand, let him sniff you. Don't make direct eye contact yet. Let him come to you on his terms. Michael extended his hand slowly. His fingers trembled slightly, but his expression was calm. Gunner approached cautiously, nose working. He sniffed Michael's hand, his arm, his chest. Then he sat down, looking up at the man with those intelligent amber eyes. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Michael said something that changed everything. I was there. Jake frowned. What? Michael's eyes never left Gunner's. Fallujah 2019. We were providing security for a convoy. There was a K-9 unit with us, bomb detection. German Shepherd and his handler, some army sergeant. They saved us that day. Found an IED planted under the bridge we were about to cross. Michael's voice thickened. I never knew their names, but I remember the dog. Big dark fur, smart as hell. Jake's heart stopped. Michael, what month was that? October. October 14th. Why? Margaret pulled out her tablet, scrolling frantically through Gunner's service records. Her face went white. Oh my God. What? Jake demanded. Margaret turned the tablet around. There on the screen was a military report dated October 14, 2019. Successful IED detection by MWD Gunner and SGT Daniel Carter. Location route, Brass Fallujah Province. Saved convoy of 47 personnel, including attached Marine Corps security detail. Michael had been in that convoy. Gunner had saved his life. The air seemed to leave the yard. Everyone stood frozen, processing the impossible coincidence. Michael's voice came out broken. That was him. That was Gunner. That was him. Jake confirmed, his throat tight. Michael dropped to his knees in front of Gunner. Tears streamed down his face. You saved me. 5 years ago you saved my life, and I never got to say thank you. Gunner moved forward, pressing his head against Michael's chest. The man wrapped his arms around the dog, sobbing, and Gunner stayed perfectly still, letting Michael hold him, absorbing his grief the way only a dog could. I'm sorry, Michael choked out. I'm so sorry about your handler. I'm so sorry about everything you've been through, but I swear to God I will take care of you. I will love you the way he did. I promise. Gunner made that soft whining sound, the one that meant comfort, understanding, forgiveness. Jake had to turn away, his own eyes burning. Margaret was crying openly. Elena had her hand pressed to her mouth. This wasn't just a placement. This was fate. After several minutes, Michael pulled back, wiping his face. Sorry, I don't usually... Don't apologize, Margaret said. That was beautiful. Michael looked at Jake. Did you know, when you fought for him, did you know he'd saved people? I knew he was a hero, Jake said. I just didn't know he'd saved you. Michael stood up slowly, Gunner staying close to his side. I want him. If he'll have me, I want to be his handler. Gunner, Jake said softly. What do you think, buddy? Gunner looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he looked up at Michael and sat down at the man's left side, the exact position a working dog takes with his handler. He'd chosen. Jake felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. Then he's yours. Margaret spent the next hour going over protocols, feeding schedules, medical needs, emergency contacts. Michael listened intently, taking notes, asking questions, treating the responsibility with the seriousness it deserved. When it was time for Jake to leave, he crouched down in front of Gunner one last time. You take care of him, okay? Jake whispered. And let him take care of you. That's what partners do. Gunner licked his hand, gentle and sweet. Jake stood up, shook Michael's hand. You call me if you need anything, day or night. I mean it. Thank you, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. For not giving up on him. For giving me this chance. Jake nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He walked to his truck, climbed in, and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. Through the window, he could see Michael and Gunner walking together toward the training yard. Michael's hand rested on Gunner's head, and the dog stayed close to his side. They looked right together. They looked whole. Jake started the engine and drove away, tears streaming down his face, knowing he'd done the right thing, but feeling the loss anyway. 3 weeks later, Jake was finishing paperwork when his phone rang. Unknown number. Officer Morrison. This is Michael Reed. Jake's heart jumped. Michael, is everything okay? Is Gunner? Gunner's fine, Michael said quickly. Better than fine, actually. He's amazing. But I'm calling because... He paused. Something happened. Something you need to know about. Jake's stomach dropped. What happened? I had an episode last night. Bad one. Nightmare about the ambush where I lost my unit. I woke up swinging, completely disoriented. My ex-wife used to run when that happened, said it scared her too much. Michael's voice cracked. But Gunner Jake, he didn't run. He jumped on the bed and pressed his whole body against me. Wouldn't let me move, just held me down with his weight until I came back to reality. Jake exhaled slowly. That's called deep pressure therapy. Margaret's team taught him that. It saved my life, Michael said. I was reaching for my nightstand and I keep a gun in there. If Gunnar hadn't stopped me, if he hadn't brought me back. He couldn't finish the sentence. Jake felt cold. Michael. I'm okay now, Michael assured him. I called my therapist this morning. We're adjusting my treatment plan. But Jake, I need you to know, Gunnar's not just a service dog. He's the reason I'm still here, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure he knows he's loved. Jake's throat closed up. That's all I ever wanted for him. I'm bringing him to Ashford County next month, Michael continued. There's a Veterans Day ceremony at the Memorial Park. I thought if you're free and if Sarah and her son want to come, we could all meet up. Let them see Gunnar. Let them know he's okay. I'll call Sarah, Jake promised. She'd love that. Tommy would love that. Good, Michael paused. Jake, thank you for everything. You gave me my life back. You gave Gunnar his life back, Jake said. That makes us even. After they hung up, Jake sat at his desk feeling lighter than he had in months. He called Sarah immediately. Jake, she sounded worried. Is something wrong? Everything's right, Jake said, and told her about Michael's call, about the ceremony, about Gunnar's new life. Sarah cried, but this time they were happy tears. Tommy's going to lose his mind. He's been asking every single day if we can visit Gunnar. Tell him yes, Jake said. Tell him his dad's partner is doing exactly what his dad would have wanted, saving lives and being loved. I will, Sarah promised. Jake, you did good. You know that, right? You saved that dog, and in doing that you saved Michael and probably dozens of other people Gunnar will help over the years. That's legacy. Jake's chest tightened with emotion. Danny started it. I just finished what he began. Then Danny would be proud, Sarah said softly. Veterans Day arrived cold and clear. The Memorial Park was packed with people, veterans in uniform, families holding flags, children running between the monuments. A small stage had been set up near the center, and Jake spotted Michael standing off to the side, Gunnar sitting calmly at his feet in his service vest. The dog looked good, healthy and alert, his eyes bright, his tail wagging gently as people walked past. Jake. Tommy's voice cut through the crowd. The boy came running, Sarah chasing after him. Is that Gunnar? Can I say hi? Let's ask Michael first, Jake said, leading them over. Michael saw them coming and smiled. You must be Tommy. Tommy nodded, suddenly shy. Is it okay if I pet Gunnar? Gunnar, Michael said. Break. The moment the command was given, Gunnar's entire demeanor changed from professional to joyful. He spotted Tommy, and his tail went into overdrive. Tommy dropped to his knees, and Gunnar practically tackled him, licking his face, whining with happiness. The boy laughed, hugging the dog's neck. He remembers me. Of course he does, Sarah said, kneeling beside her son. She looked up at Michael with tears in her eyes. Thank you for taking care of him, for giving him a purpose. He's taking care of me, Michael said. Your husband trained one hell of a dog, ma'am. I owe him everything. Sarah's hand went to her heart. Danny would be so happy to know Gunnar found you. The ceremony started a few minutes later. Speeches were made, names were read, wreaths were laid. When they called for a moment of silence for fallen soldiers, Michael stood at attention, Gunnar sitting perfectly at his side. Jake watched them, feeling a sense of completion he hadn't felt in years. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not painless, but real. Honest. True. After the ceremony, they all went to lunch together. Jake, Sarah, Tommy, Michael, and Gunnar. They sat outside a small diner sharing stories about Danny, about Shadow, about all the dogs and handlers who'd served and sacrificed. Tommy listened with wide eyes, soaking up every word about his father. When Michael told the story about the convoy Gunnar had saved, about how Danny had spotted the IED and saved 47 lives, Tommy's face filled with pride. "My dad was a hero," he said softly. "Your dad was the best," Michael agreed. "And so was his dog." Gunnar, lying under the table, thumped his tail in agreement. As the sun started to set, they said their goodbyes. Tommy hugged Gunnar fiercely, making him promise to be good. Sarah thanked Michael again, her voice thick with emotion. Jake walked Michael to his truck. "You're really okay, both of you." "We're getting there," Michael said. "Some days are hard, but Gunnar makes them bearable. He gives me a reason to get up, a reason to keep fighting." "That's what Danny would have wanted," Jake said. Michael loaded Gunnar into the truck, then turned back. "Jake, I don't know if you believe in fate or destiny or whatever, but I think Danny's still looking out for us, all of us. He sent his dog to save me 5 years ago, and then he sent you to save his dog, and now Gunnar's saving me again. That's not coincidence. That's love." Jake's eyes burned. "Yeah, I think you're right." They shook hands and Michael drove away. Jake stood in the parking lot watching the taillights disappear, feeling Sarah's hand on his arm. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," Jake said, and meant it. "I really am." Tommy ran up, grabbing Jake's hand. "Officer Jake, do you think my dad can see us from heaven?" Jake looked down at the boy, seeing Danny's eyes staring back at him. "I think he sees everything. And I think he's proud of you." "And Gunnar?" "Especially Gunnar," Jake said. Tommy smiled, and Sarah pulled both of them into a hug. They stood there together, 3 people bound by loss and love, and a dog who'd taught them all that broken things could heal. The sky turned orange and pink, and somewhere across town, Michael and Gunnar were heading home together. Michael would probably have nightmares tonight, but Gunnar would be there pressing his weight against his handler's chest, bringing him back to safety. And tomorrow they'd wake up and do it all again. Fighting their battles, healing their wounds, living their lives with purpose and love. That's what heroes did. Human and canine alike. Jake drove Sarah and Tommy home, his heart fuller than it had been in years. When he finally got back to his apartment, he found himself pulling out an old photo album he'd kept hidden in a drawer. There was Shadow, young and strong, sitting beside Jake in their patrol unit, loyal, brave, gone too soon. Jake ran his fingers over the image. "I hope you and Danny are up there together, buddy, taking care of each other. And I hope you know I didn't give up. I kept fighting, just like you taught me." He closed the album and set it on his nightstand where he could see it every morning. Tomorrow he'd go back to work, back to the chaos and danger and heartbreak that came with the badge. But tonight, he'd rest easy, knowing that somewhere out there, a broken soldier and a broken dog were healing each other. And that was enough. That was everything. Jake turned off the light and closed his eyes, finally at peace. The story wasn't over. It never really would be. Love didn't end with death. It transformed, continued, found new ways to manifest. Danny's love lived on in Gunnar. Gunnar's love lived on in Michael. And all their love lived on in the people they'd touched, the lives they'd saved, the hope they'd inspired. That was the real miracle. Not that broken things could heal, but that healed things could go on to heal others. And the cycle would continue rippling outward, touching lives no one could predict. Because that's what love did. It multiplied. It endured. It saved. One person, one dog, one choice at a time. Show more. 6 months after Veterans Day, Jake got the call he'd been dreading. "Jake, it's Michael. Something's happened." Jake's blood went cold. He was standing in the precinct break room, coffee halfway to his lips. "Is Gunnar okay?" "Gunnar's fine. Better than fine, actually." Michael's voice was shaking. "But Jake, we need your help. We need you to come to Austin, now." "What's going on?" "There's a kid," Michael said. 10 years old. His father was killed in Iraq 2 years ago. The boy stopped speaking after the funeral, hasn't said a word since. His mother reached out to Guardian Angel, desperate for anything that might help. Margaret thought maybe Gunnar could reach him. Jake's heart clenched. "And we've been working with him for 3 days. Nothing. The kid won't even look at Gunnar. His mom's at the end of her rope talking about inpatient psychiatric care. Michael paused. But Margaret thinks if we could get Tommy here, another kid who lost his father, another kid who connected with Gunnar, maybe that would make the difference. You want me to ask Sarah to bring Tommy to Austin? I know it's a lot, Michael said. I know it's asking them to relive their trauma to help a stranger. But Jake, this kid is disappearing inside himself. And I think Tommy might be the only one who can pull him back. Jake closed his eyes, thinking about Sarah, about how hard she'd fought to keep Tommy from drowning in grief. Asking her to expose him to another grieving child felt cruel. But then he remembered the way Tommy had looked at Gunnar that first day. The way the dog had given the boy something to hold on to. Maybe Tommy could do the same for someone else. Let me call Sarah, Jake said. I can't promise anything. That's all I'm asking, Michael said. Thank you. Jake hung up and immediately dialed Sarah's number. She answered on the second ring. Hey Jake, everything okay? I need to ask you something, Jake said. And I need you to know you can say no. No guilt, no pressure. Just hear me out first. He explained the situation, the silent boy, the desperate mother Margaret's request, Michael's belief that Tommy might help. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. Let me talk to Tommy. If he wants to go, we'll go. But this has to be his choice. Understood, Jake said. Thank you for even considering it. That dog saved my son's heart, Sarah said. If Tommy can help save someone else's, then we owe it to Gunnar to try. 2 days later, Jake found himself driving Sarah and Tommy to Austin. The 3-hour drive felt longer with the weight of what they were about to attempt. Tommy sat in the back seat quiet, but not withdrawn. He'd said yes immediately when his mother asked with the same determination that had driven him to testify at the hearing. I know what it's like to miss your dad, Tommy had said simply. If I can help someone else who's sad, I want to. Now as they pulled into the Guardian Angel facility, Jake saw Michael waiting outside with Gunnar at his side. The dog looked magnificent, confident, alert, every inch the professional service animal. Tommy! Michael called out waving. Tommy jumped out of the car and ran straight to Gunnar. The dog greeted him with enthusiasm, but maintained his training, not jumping or getting too excited. He's gotten so good, Tommy said, scratching behind Gunnar's ears. He's the best partner I've ever had, Michael said, then corrected himself. Second best. Your dad will always be first. Tommy smiled up at him. Dad would like you. Michael's eyes went glassy. That means everything, kid. Margaret emerged from the main building looking exhausted. Thank you all for coming. I know this is asking a lot. Where's the boy? Sarah asked. Inside with his mother. Her name is Patricia Reynolds. Her son is Cameron. Margaret's expression was grim. I need to prepare you he's not responsive. He won't make eye contact, won't react to stimuli. It's like he's not even there. Has he been like this since his father died? Jake asked. His mother says he spoke for about 6 months after the funeral. Then one day he just stopped. Doctors can't find a physical cause. They think it's selective mutism triggered by unresolved grief. Tommy's hand found his mother's. Can I meet him? Margaret led them inside to a comfortable room set up like a living area. A woman sat on a couch, her face haggard with worry and exhaustion. Beside her was a small boy with dark hair and hollow eyes staring at nothing. Patricia, this is Sarah Carter and her son Tommy. Tommy's father was also killed in action. He's the one I told you about, the one who connected with Gunnar. Patricia stood up quickly. Thank you for coming. I don't know if this will help, but I'm willing to try anything. Sarah took her hand. I understand. More than you know. Tommy walked slowly toward Cameron, then sat down on the floor a few feet away. He didn't try to talk to the boy, didn't force interaction. He just sat there, present and patient. Michael brought Gunnar over. Cameron, this is Gunnar. He's a service dog. He helps me when I'm sad or scared." Cameron didn't react, didn't even blink. Tommy spoke up, then his voice gentle. "Gunner's dad died too. His name was Danny. Danny was my dad. He died in the war just like your dad." Still nothing from Cameron. Tommy continued. "I was really sad when my dad died. So sad I thought I'd never be happy again. But then I met Gunner and he understood, because he was sad too." Gunner moved closer to Cameron, settling down on the floor between the two boys. His big body formed a bridge connecting them. "Gunner's really soft," Tommy said. "Do you want to pet him?" Cameron's eyes flickered toward the dog for just a second, then away. It was the first response he'd shown in 3 days. Patricia gasped softly, covering her mouth. Sarah squeezed her hand. Tommy kept talking, his voice steady and calm. "My mom says it's okay to be sad. She says Dad wouldn't want us to stop living just because he's gone. But I think he'd understand if we needed time. If we needed to be quiet and think and remember." Gunner shifted slightly, pressing his side against Cameron's leg. The boy didn't pull away. "I talk to my dad sometimes," Tommy continued. "Even though he can't talk back. I tell him about school and my friends and Gunner. I think he hears me. Do you talk to your dad?" Cameron's shoulders trembled, his hands clenched into fists. "It's okay if you don't want to talk," Tommy said. "Gunner doesn't talk either, but he listens really good, and he never judges you for being sad." A single tear rolled down Cameron's cheek. Patricia made a sound like a sob, and Sarah had to hold her back from rushing to her son. Gunner turned his head, looking directly at Cameron. Then, very deliberately, he lifted his paw and placed it on the boy's knee. The same gesture Danny had taught him. The gesture that meant family. Cameron's breath hitched. His hand moved slowly, trembling, until it rested on Gunner's head. "Good," Tommy whispered. "He likes that. He likes when you touch him." Cameron's fingers curled into Gunner's fur. His whole body started shaking, and then a sound came out raw, broken, the first sound he'd made in 8 months. "Dad!" It was barely a whisper, but it shattered the silence like thunder. Patricia broke free from Sarah and dropped to her knees beside her son, pulling him into her arms. Cameron clung to her, and the sobs that came were violent and healing all at once. "I miss him," Cameron choked out. "I miss him so much." "I know, baby," Patricia cried. "I know, me too." Gunner stayed pressed against Cameron, absorbing the boy's grief the way he'd done for Michael, for Tommy, for everyone who'd needed him. Tommy moved closer, putting his hand on Cameron's shoulder. "It's okay to cry. I cried a lot too. Gunner helped me. He'll help you." Cameron looked at Tommy through his tears. "Does it get better?" "Yeah," Tommy said honestly. "Not all the way better, but better enough. And you don't have to do it alone." The two boys sat there together, connected by loss and grief, and a dog who understood both, and Jake had to walk out of the room before he lost it completely. Michael followed him into the hallway. They stood there in silence, both men wiping their eyes. "That dog's a miracle," Michael finally said. "That dog's what happens when love refuses to die," Jake corrected. They watched through the window as Gunner lay between the two boys, letting them hold on to him, giving them a safe place to fall apart and put themselves back together. Margaret joined them, her own face streaked with tears. "I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen hundreds of placements, but I've never seen anything like that." "Danny trained him well," Jake said softly. "Danny trained him to save lives," Margaret agreed. "And that's exactly what he's still doing." Done. They stayed in Austin for 3 more days. Cameron started speaking more slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. He asked questions about Tommy's dad, about Gunner, about how to keep living when everything hurt. Tommy answered with a wisdom far beyond his 8 years, sharing his own journey through grief, his own moments of anger and sadness, and eventual acceptance. The two boys formed a bond that transcended their age difference. They understood each other in a way most people never would. On the third day, Patricia approached Sarah with tears in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you. Your son gave me my son back." Sarah hugged her tightly. "Your son gave my son purpose. Healing someone else helped Tommy heal a little more himself." They exchanged phone numbers, promising to stay in touch to let the boys talk when they needed support. When it was time to leave, Cameron hugged Gunnar for a long time. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "Gunnar lives with me now," Michael said. "But we visit Guardian Angel every month, and any time you need us, all you have to do is call." Cameron nodded, then turned to Tommy. "Thank you for understanding." "We're brothers now," Tommy said seriously. "Brothers in missing our dads. That means we look out for each other." Cameron smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen in 8 months. "Brothers." They fist bumped, and Jake felt his heart swell with emotion. On the drive home, Tommy fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted but peaceful. Sarah looked back at her son with love and pride. "He's growing up," she said softly to Jake. "He's growing into the man his father would be proud of," Jake said. "Danny would be proud of all of us," Sarah said, "for not giving up, for fighting for Gunnar, for using our pain to help others." Jake nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. When they pulled up to Sarah's house, Tommy woke up groggily. "Jake," he said, his voice sleepy, "do you think Gunnar knows how many people he's helped?" Jake turned to look at the boy. "I think he knows he has a job to do, and I think he does it because that's what your dad taught him to serve, to protect, to love." "I want to be like that when I grow up," Tommy said. "I want to help people who are hurting." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You already do, baby." Tommy smiled and climbed out of the car, heading inside. Sarah lingered for a moment. "Jake, I've been thinking about everything that's happened, about how Gunnar found his way from being broken to being a healer." She paused. "I want to start a foundation, in Danny's name, to help military families dealing with loss, to support working dog programs, to connect kids like Tommy and Cameron who need each other." Jake stared at her. "Sarah, that's incredible." "I can't do it alone," she said. "I'd need help. Someone who understands the K-9 world, who knows the legal system, who fought as hard as I did to save Gunnar." She looked at him meaningfully. "I'd need a partner." Jake's breath caught. "You're asking me to help run a foundation?" "I'm asking you to help turn our grief into something good," Sarah said. "To make sure Danny's legacy and Gunnar's legacy lives on." Jake felt tears burn his eyes. "I'd be honored." Sarah smiled, squeezed his hand, and headed inside. Jake sat in his truck for a long time, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The broken dog in a cage, the little boy with his father's eyes, the veteran who'd been saved twice by the same animal, the silent child who'd found his voice again. All of it connected, all of it meaningful, all of it part of a bigger story about love and loss and the way healing ripples outward, touching lives in ways no one could predict. His phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Cameron's mother just called. He told her about a nightmare he had about his dad. First time he's talked about his feelings in 8 months. "Gunnar's magic is real. Thank you for everything." Jake texted back. "Thank Gunnar. Thank Danny. Thank love that refuses to quit." Michael replied with a photo. It showed him and Gunnar sitting on a porch at sunset, the dog's head resting on Michael's knee, both of them looking peaceful. The caption read, "Home." Jake saved the photo and started his truck. 1 year later, the Daniel Carter Memorial Foundation held its first annual fundraiser. The event took place at a park in Ashford County, with booths set up for military family resources, K-9 demonstrations, and grief counseling services. Hundreds of people showed up, veterans' families, community members, all coming together to honor Danny's memory and support the cause. Jake stood near the main tent watching Sarah give a speech about the foundation's mission. Tommy sat in the front row looking proud. "She's something else," Chief Warren said, appearing beside Jake. "Yeah, she is," Jake agreed. "Heard you're thinking about leaving the force. Going to work for the Foundation full-time." Jake nodded. "It's time. I've spent 15 years enforcing the law. I think I'm ready to spend the next 15 helping people heal." Warren clapped him on the shoulder. "Danny would be proud. Hell, I'm proud." "Thanks, Chief." "You staying for the ceremony?" "Wouldn't miss it." At 3 p.m., a special presentation began. Margaret Walsh took the stage, bringing Michael and Gunnar with her. "Today we're honoring a very special service dog," Margaret announced to the crowd. "In the 18 months since Gunnar was certified, he's worked with 12 veterans struggling with PTSD. He's helped 3 children process traumatic loss. He's been present at 42 therapy sessions, 16 crisis interventions, and countless moments of quiet support that never make the news but change lives every single day." The crowd applauded. Gunnar sat calmly at Michael's side, his service vest gleaming in the sunlight. "But Gunnar's story is bigger than numbers," Margaret continued. "Gunnar's story is about a dog who lost everything and found a reason to keep going. It's about a handler who refused to give up on him. It's about a family who chose love over fear. And it's about a community that came together to prove that broken things can heal, and that healed things can heal others." More applause, louder now. Today, Guardian Angel Service Dog Foundation is proud to present Gunnar with the Hero's Heart Award, recognizing exceptional service and dedication. Margaret held up a medal on a blue ribbon. "Michael, would you do the honors?" Michael took the medal and knelt beside Gunnar. His hands shook as he fastened it to the dog's collar. "You saved my life," Michael said, his voice breaking. "More than once. In more ways than I can count. I love you, buddy. Thank you for choosing me." Gunnar licked his face, tail wagging, and the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Tommy jumped up from his seat and ran onto the stage, throwing his arms around Gunnar. The dog accepted the hug with his usual grace, pressing close to the boy. "That's my dad's dog," Tommy shouted to the crowd. "My dad was a hero, and so is Gunnar." The applause grew deafening. People were crying, smiling, standing to honor the dog who'd given so much. Jake felt Sarah's hand slip into his. She was crying too, but smiling through the tears. "We did it," she whispered. "We saved him." "He saved us," Jake corrected. Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand tighter. After the ceremony, people lined up to meet Gunnar to shake Michael's hand to thank them both for their service. The dog handled it all with patience and grace, accepting pets and praise with quiet dignity. Cameron and Patricia drove up from Austin specifically for the event. Cameron wore a shirt that said Gunnar's brother and carried a drawing he'd made of the dog. "I made this for you," Cameron said shyly, handing it to Michael. Michael looked at the picture, a boy, a dog, and a soldier in heaven watching over them both. His eyes went wet. "This is beautiful, Cameron. Thank you." "Gunnar taught me it's okay to remember," Cameron said. "He taught me my dad's not really gone as long as I keep him in my heart." Michael pulled the boy into a hug. "Your dad's watching over you. I know he is. Just like Tommy's dad is watching over him. And my unit is watching over me. And all of them are proud of how brave you boys are." The two boys, Tommy and Cameron, stood together near Gunnar, both of them touching the dog like he was an anchor keeping them steady. Jake took a photo with his phone. He'd frame it later, put it on his desk at the Foundation office, a reminder of why they did this work. As the sun started to set, the crowd began to thin. Volunteers packed up booths, families headed home, and the park slowly emptied. Jake found himself standing alone near Danny's memorial plaque, which had been installed at the park 6 months earlier. It bore his name, rank dates of service, and a single line: "A soldier's love never dies. It transforms, continues, and saves." "Hey, Jake." He turned to find Michael and Gunnar approaching. The dog looked tired but content, his medal still gleaming on his collar. "Hell of a day," Jake said. "Hell of a year," Michael corrected. He looked at the memorial plaque. "I never met him, but I owe him everything." "He'd be glad to know his partner found you," Jake said. "That gunner's still out there saving lives." Michael was quiet for a moment. "I got my 6-month psych eval results last week. My therapist says I've made more progress in the past year than some people make in a decade." She asked what changed. He scratched Gunner's ears. "I told her I found someone who understands." "You saved each other," Jake said. "Yeah," Michael agreed. "We did." They stood there together, 3 survivors bound by loss and healing, watching the last light fade from the sky. Gunner sat between them, head high, eyes alert, still on duty, even in the quiet moments. Tommy and Cameron ran over, laughing about something their grief temporarily set aside in the joy of friendship. Sarah and Patricia followed, talking like old friends, planning playdates and therapy sessions, and ways to support each other through the hard days that would inevitably come. Margaret Walsh waved goodbye from her car, already planning the next placement, the next rescue, the next chance to turn tragedy into hope. And somewhere far above, in whatever place fallen soldiers go, Danny Carter watched over them all with pride. His sacrifice hadn't ended with his death. It had multiplied, rippled outward, touched lives he'd never meet and never know about. Because that's what love did. It endured beyond the grave, transformed pain into purpose, turned one loyal dog into a bridge between the broken and the healed. Jake pulled out his phone and sent a group text to Sarah, Michael, Margaret, and Patricia. "Thank you all for fighting for Gunner, for choosing hope, for proving that the impossible is only impossible until someone decides to try. Danny would be proud. I know I am." The responses came quickly. Sarah: "Danny's legacy lives on. In Gunner, in Tommy, in all of us." Michael: "This dog saved my life. I'll spend the rest of mine making sure others get the same chance." Margaret: "One dog at a time, we change the world." Patricia: "You gave me my son back. I'll never forget that." Jake put his phone away and looked at the people gathered around Danny's memorial, talking, laughing, healing together. This was what success looked like. Not perfect, not painless, but real and true, and worth every fight they'd fought to get here. Gunner walked over and sat at Jake's feet, leaning his weight against Jake's leg. Jake crouched down, looking into those intelligent amber eyes. "You did good, buddy. Better than good. You became exactly what Danny trained you to be, a hero who saves lives." Gunner's tail thumped against the ground. "And you taught us something important," Jake continued. "You taught us that broken doesn't mean worthless. That trauma doesn't define you. That with enough love and patience and refusal to give up, healing is possible." He pressed his forehead against Gunner's. "Thank you for letting me be part of your story." Gunner licked his face once, gentle and sweet, and Jake laughed through his tears. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More veterans who needed help. More families struggling with loss. More dogs who needed saving. But tonight they'd rest in the knowledge that they'd done something that mattered. They'd taken one aggressive, untouchable, broken dog and proven that love was stronger than trauma, that hope was more powerful than despair, and that second chances were always worth fighting for. No one could touch Gunner when he first arrived at Ashford County Sheriff's Department, terrified and grieving and lost. But a little boy with his father's courage reached through the bars anyway, and in doing so, changed everything. For Gunner, for Michael, for Cameron, for Tommy, for Sarah, for Jake, for everyone who would hear this story and remember that giving up is never the answer, that broken things can heal, and that sometimes the most ferocious beasts are just souls crying out for someone brave enough to love them anyway. That's the legacy Danny Carter left behind. Not just a dog, but a movement, a reminder, a promise that love never dies. It transforms, continues, and saves one heart at a time.